Russian is an East Slavic language and an official language in Russia, Belarus, and Kyrgyzstan. It is an unofficial but widely spoken language in Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Latvia, Estonia, and to a lesser extent, the other countries that were once constituent republics of the Soviet Union and former participants of the Eastern Bloc. Russian belongs to the family of Indo-European languages and is one of the three living members of the East Slavic languages. Written examples of Old East Slavonic are attested from the 10th century onwards. It is the most geographically widespread language of Eurasia and the most widely spoken of the Slavic languages. It is also the largest native language in Europe, with 144 million native speakers in Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. Russian is the 8th most spoken language in the world by number of native speakers and the 7th by total number of speakers. The language is one of the 6 official languages of the United Nations. Russian distinguishes between consonant phonemes with palatal secondary articulation and those without, the so-called soft and hard sounds. This distinction is found between pairs of almost all consonants and is one of the most distinguishing features of the language. Another important aspect is the reduction of unstressed vowels. Stress, which is unpredictable, is not normally indicated orthographically, though an optional acute accent may be used to mark stress. Classification. Russian is a Slavic language of the Indo-European family. It is a lineal descendant of the language used in Kiev and Rus. From the point of view of the spoken language, its closest relatives are Ukrainian, Belarusian, and Russian, the other three languages in the East Slavic group. In many places in eastern and southern Ukraine and throughout Belarus, these languages are spoken interchangeably. And in certain areas traditional bilingualism resulted in language mixtures, e.g., Surzyk in eastern Ukraine and Trashianka in Belarus. An East Slavic Old Novgorod dialect, although vanished during the 15th or 16th century, is sometimes considered to have played a significant role in the formation of modern Russian. Also, Russian has notable lexical similarities with Bulgarian due to a common Church Slavonic influence on both languages, as well as because of later interaction in the 19th–20th centuries, although Bulgarian grammar differs markedly from Russian. In the 19th century, the language was often called Great Russian, to distinguish it from Belarusian, then called White Russian, and Ukrainian, then called Little Russian. The vocabulary, principles of word formations, and, to some extent, inflections and literary style of Russian have been also influenced by Church Slavonic, a developed and partly Russified form of the South Slavic Old Church Slavonic language used by the Russian Orthodox Church. However, the East Slavic forms have tended to be used exclusively in the various dialects that are experiencing a rapid decline. In some cases, both the East Slavic and the Church Slavonic forms are in use, with many different meanings. For details, see Russian phonology and history of the Russian language. Over the course of centuries, the vocabulary and literary style of Russian have also been influenced by Western and Central European languages such as Greek, Latin, Polish, Dutch, German, French, Italian and English, and to a lesser extent the languages to the south and the east, Uralic, Turkic, Persian, Arabic, as well as Hebrew. According to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, Russian is classified as a Level 4 language in terms of learning difficulty for native English speakers, requiring approximately 1,100 hours of immersion instruction to achieve intermediate fluency. It is also regarded by the United States intelligence community as a hard target language, due to both its difficulty to master for English speakers and its critical role in American world policy. Standard Russian. The standard form of Russian is generally regarded as the modern Russian literary language. It arose in the beginning of the 18th century with the modernization reforms of the Russian state under the rule of Peter the Great, and developed from the Moscow dialect substratum under the influence of some of the previous centuries' Russian chancellery language. Mikhail Lomonosov first compiled a normalizing grammar book in 1755. In 1783, the Russian Academy's first explanatory Russian dictionary appeared. During the end of the 18th and 19th centuries, during a period known as the Golden Age, the grammar, vocabulary and pronunciation of the Russian language were stabilized and standardized, and it became the nationwide literary language. Meanwhile, Russia's world-famous literature flourished. Until the 20th century, the language's spoken form was the language of only the upper noble classes and urban population, as Russian peasants from the countryside continued to speak in their own dialects. By the mid-20th century, such dialects were forced out with the introduction of the compulsory education system that was established by the Soviet government. Despite the formalization of Standard Russian, some non-standard dialectal features are still observed in colloquial speech.